Okay. Do you guys know how much sleep is required or recommended for teenagers to get each night? Alright, so a 2017 WebMD article titled, "How Much Sleep Do Children Need?" says that children ages 1 to 3 years old should get around 12 to 14 hours of sleep per night. Children ages 3 to 6 should get around 10 to 12 hours of sleep per night. Children ages 7 to 12 should get around 10 to 11 hours of sleep per night. And finally, children ages 12 to 18 should get about 8 to 9 hours of sleep per night. So I would say that most teenagers don't get enough sleep per night. They don't get the recommended hours of sleep per night. And this could be because of multiple things, including school activities, sports activities, and church activities. So in my opinion, one thing that could change to allow teens to get more sleep is having the school day start at a later time. So one of the biggest reasons that teens should get enough sleep is sleep deprivation. So most teens only get around 7 to 7.25 hours of sleep per night, which leaves them sleep deprived. And this information comes from sleepfoundation.org. When teenagers are sleep deprived, they can have changes in their mood, their decision-making skills can be affected, and their performance in school can also be affected. And one of the highest risks of sleep deprivation in teens is falling asleep behind the wheel. And this information also comes from sleepfoundation.org. So a 2016 article titled "Why Change" took a survey, and 60% of schools responded. And this is just a pie chart, kind of as a visual to help you understand better. So this part of the chart is 10% of schools, and they said that their school starts before 7:30 in the morning. This part says that 40% of schools start before 8 in the morning, and this is 15% starting after 8:30 in the morning. So along with school starting that early, there are also activities that happen after school, which could be work for some students, sports practice for others, and then after all of that, there's homework. So with school getting out at 3:30 and then having all of those activities afterwards, a lot of students don't get to bed until around 10 or 11 p.m. And then the next morning, they have to get up at 6 p.m. for school and do it all again the next day. One of the biggest things that affects teens and their sleeping schedule is puberty, believe it or not. When teens go through puberty, their internal clock shifts. So at one point, they were able to fall asleep at 9 p.m., and now they can't fall asleep until 11 p.m. And this information comes from sleepfoundation.org. So when a teenager falls asleep later, naturally they're going to get up at a later time. So for example, they used to be able to go to bed at 9 o'clock and get up at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and now they're going to bed at 11 o'clock and getting up 2 hours later, again at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. But don't forget about school, and most teens get up for school at about 6 in the morning, which means they're waking up in the middle of a deep sleep. And this information comes from the 2016 article titled "Why Change?" So in rebuttal to this, a lot of people say that school should stay starting at the same time or even earlier, and a lot of students even say that school should start at an earlier time. Because if you start earlier, you get out earlier, and vice versa. If you start at a later time, you're going to get out at a later time. I believe that this is a valid argument, because if you start earlier, then everything's going to get done earlier. You're going to get out of school earlier, and then sports will be done earlier, work will be done earlier, and you'll get your homework done at an earlier time as well. But because of the internal clock shift, they still won't be able to get up or go to sleep at a later time. So they'll still be going to sleep at the same time, if not at a later time. So in the long run, teenagers would actually be losing more sleep than they are right now, because getting up at that earlier time for school is going to result in them getting less sleep. So in conclusion, I think that we can all agree that life is busy, and with school and work and sports and other activities, sleep gets pushed to the back burner. It's hard to arrange everything in our lives around getting enough sleep, which is why I think that having school start at a later time would be a good way to help teens get enough sleep. Thank you.